I want you to use 5 up. Use this spell on electricity and guests. I think it makes the party much more interesting. You should probably try to be conspicuous, or they might kill you. Oh, and the party is participation only. You'll have to find a way. Have fun.
Away from WCW, offered him a guaranteed contract. The place today, in the 90s, they didn't exist in the WWF. When Nick and the likes of Steve Austin found about this, they felt slighted. They've also been born at a similar time. There has been no mention of this. You can't get mad at Mark for accepting, but man, this did not work out. While he wasn't presented as wild man, the Attitude Era was slowly creeping in, and gimmicks like this weren't clicking for. Actually, it was working, but things like his wife. And that sounds way too crass, and I don't mean to, but it's just the truth. Sable at narrow side became a fan favourite interest. As the audience got younger and younger, it was basically an attempt to
eat some ass, Sable.
It worked. You can say 2 bells because then Mark became second fiddle in this pairing in the fall on. Sable was a megastar. There was no going back. It was a shame for Mero because he still had something to offer, but this was such a shift where everything paid for the run. Because he is the best dude, he spent his post-wrestling life trying to help others. That really is what's important. Things considered, Mark sounds like a truly awesome guy. Number 2, Muhammad Hassan's last Friday. If you do want more context about this, go and watch Muhammad Hassan's interview he did with Chris Van Vliet in 2024. You get the whole story. The short version is WWE just started pushing the barrel jump for a taste of this man. This was not good. It didn't start that way, as Hassan was meant to be a somewhat nuanced character that reflected people's own biases back on them. It's been a bit too heavy for WWE, yep. There was a reason for that. Simply put, as soon as they wanted to increase the food, we just made Muhammad stare into the foreign heel, and it was not.
You're a fit one. And hold on, there's a dinner party here tonight. No one gets into the room until it's prepared. And no one gets in the room even after it's prepared, unless they're on the list. And even if they're on the list, they better be dressed for it. This is important to the Countess, and no one is going to muck it up. Got it?
Basically, used this pay-per-view industry. Rather than chokeslam through the stage at the end of it, and it was sold like that with it, he's gone. Okay. He never returned to TV and whatnot. The party who played the character deserved around 2 played somebody who wasn't controversial. Never ever happened. Instead, he took all the heat, was released from the company, and unsurprisingly, decided he wanted nothing to do with the industry anymore. Wonder why. Number 1, the Public Enemy get tapered. The Public Enemy were ECW's most over team. Well, a lot of people deserve credit. They were certainly too.
Stop right there, criminal scum!
No. Rock and Johnny Grimes were also big.
Then pay me!
So this was as possible. The WWF, they weren't ready for the backstage environment that awaited them. It began in March 1999, where it was going to be the Public Enemy for HCA. They didn't want to take a tape with them, but that was their gimmick. That's what I hope. Given that they were couldn't believe these words come out of them. Oh, they went out on the Sunday night and killed these guys almost literally. You can see it today, within a few seconds you'll notice it's the real beating. There's some chair shots. Whatever what's said, it was the same with the Steel Step 2 above the end. It looked like it was the actual. As soon as one got back to management, they ended with Tony's. Yeah, there's the neck go. They did sort of carry on back in their old stumping grounds, but I don't know whether they had beforehand. Never as better than these days. Most people just don't want to talk about it.
AEW has only been a company for 3 short years, but Tony Khan has already burned through some big names. Some, like Cody, went out with a memorable match that paved the way for All Elite's future. This, meanwhile, was hidden away on Lesnar's theme program. With I'm Adam Wilmore from What Culture, and these are 10 precise moments when AEW careers ended. Number 10, Joey Janela. Bad boy Joey Janela threatened to break out as a success story in AEW. Early matches against Jon Moxley and Fighter Fest, and Kenny Omega showed some faith from the higher-ups, but it was maybe never going to last. Months later, Janela sadly began sliding down the cards. That continued until his contract expired on the 1st of May 2022. Joey's 3-year run came to an end before that date, though. His last All Elite appearance fell on the 1st of February edition of AEW Dark. There he lost to Lee Moriarty in a spirited back and forth. Spirited, but it was definitely obvious who was supposed to be the star of the piece. Janela got cradled for the pin, and as the ref's hand is just coming down for the 3 count, Janela's then valet, Kayla Rossi, realised the end was near from ringside. Rossi probably didn't know how correct she was at the time, or how final that pinfall would be. Number 9, Chavo Guerrero. Chavo had a cup of coffee style run in AEW. The long-time ex-WWE star debuted on the 21st of July 2021 as Andrade El Idolo's executive consultant. This, on the surface, was a match made in heaven. Chavo could talk, and it made sense to put a mouthpiece with El Idolo ASAP. Yeah, it didn't really take long until Tony Khan changed his mind on that. Andrade kicked Guerrero on the 10th of September episode of Rampage after Chavo had interfered in his match against Pac, which helped the handsome bugger score the win. But El Idolo dropped the legend shortly after the bell had sounded, and from there, Chavo went off to film Young Rock, and that was that, aside from some stuff on social media. Number 8, Marco Stunt. Unless you are Rey Mysterio, I think it's fair to say there are only so many times one can work the underdog gig before it grows a little stale. Marco's last AEW match came on the 4th of October 2021 episode of AEW Dark Elevation. He teamed with Fuego del Sol in a loss to Shawn Spears and Pig Wardlow. Apologies, the 6-minute clash went a little longer than expected, but ended when the latter smashed Stunt with his finish and scored the easy pin. News began circulating at the turn of the new year that Marco would be gone when his deal ran out in May, and that proved to be the case. But AEW had already benched Stunt and replaced him in Jurassic Express with Christian Cage. Number 7, Jack Evans. Remember that head-shaving angle involving Jack Evans and Orange Cassidy on the October 2021 Rampage? Yeah, probably not. It'll be one of those moments in the B-show's history that fans totally forgot about. But that wasn't quite the end of Jack's stint in All Elite. No, his final moments came in a fairly hot match against Dante Martin on the 1st of March 2022 episode of AEW Dark. Evans ate a painful-looking moonsault for the 3 count, and then his contract lapsed at the end of April. In truth, it felt like Jack's run ended after the hair angle. That totally came across like someone leaving the territory, so to speak. Ultimately, the story also did nothing for Evans' career. He slid further down the ranks and being released back onto the indie circuit. Suppose you could say it's a case of hair today, tomorrow. Number 6, Stu Grayson. For me, this one still stinks a bit. Stu Grayson was a big part of the Dark Order's business before his recent release, and his story is a bit of a quirky one. AEW taped a 12-man tag match on the 27th of April 2022. That was set to air on the 2nd of May edition of Dark Elevation. And it did. You know what else happened that day? Grayson's contract with the company expired and he left. Yes, he technically appeared on programming after he was already gone. Stu's post-match claw blows would be his last hurrah in the promotion. He debuted with a bang during the first Nothing pay-per-view in 2019, but opportunities have become more limited in the increasingly overlooked Order stable since then. Number 5, Awesome Kong. Awesome Kong had been cast as Brandy Rhodes' ticket to the top of the women's division when she burst into view during the summer of 2019. The deal with Kong seemed like a no-brainer. Her experience and star.
You've got some. Hold on. I know this is important to the. Hold on. This.
Might have intended there. Brandy's Dark Nightmare Collective story was Kong looked less awesome by standing next to such a huge show. Finally, All Elite decided to pull the plug by having Mel and Luther of the Collective kick the crap out of Kong following Mel's loss to Hikaru Shida on the 4th of February 2020 AEW Dark episode. Security then marched out to help Kong to the
What are you doing here? I don't know who you are, and I'm not all that sure about you.
Instead, she went up to start filming the
Yes?
season of
Thank you.
Glow,
How kind.
released by AEW on the 1st of June 2021. Number 4, Big Swole.
I bet the black one.
Big Swole
Goodbye.
celebrating a 2-minute win over Ali Catch on the 21st of September 2021 episode of AEW Dark. That's at the last celebration in a company ring. Things kinda, it's a bit of an understatement, got a bit messy from there, and Tony Khan had a PR nightmare. You'd have to go back to
Hold on. I know
2020
this
to
is
see the end for Swole, though there she worked a dreadful tooth-and-nail cinema style brawl with Britt Baker that proved to be a dire start to the pay-per-view. After that, Swole only worked 3 more times on the A-Show Dynamite.
Good evening.
Frustration,
What are you doing?
that she went on to criticize
What are you doing?
Yes. That will get you something. Well, you're dressed for it, and you seem like a really good person. You can go in. Sorry to bother you.
Notes her wrestling wasn't
Be
good.
seeing.
Not only that, comments on diversity in the wake of Big Swole's own remarks. That happened at the tail end of 2021, and it effectively brought the curtain down on Leo's AEW run. He wasn't seen
What?
on AEW TV after that.
Marjorie,
The promotion let his
you
contract tick down come February. Let's just say that any chances Rush had of an extension went up in smoke due to his controversy. But he didn't even say that he sat down to have an amicable chat with Tony about everything. But still,
Greetings, Dunlap.
finally ended when he popped on social media.
How goes it?
Boss. Yes, I did such behavior. One tweet was all it took. Leo was gone. Number 2, Randy Rhodes. The aforementioned Nightmare Collective idea
My
was
pleasure.
considered as one of AEW's
Take care.
worst from the
What do you
first
want?
years of promotional activity.
I've heard the dugout.
The
Be seeing
nightmare is over.
A pleasure to speak to you. Those guys that broke out of Brazil jail are tough customers.
On AEW.
Goodbye.
It's my pleasure. Good day.
As chief brand officer, and together the couple officially departed AEW on the 15th of February. And number 1, Cody Rhodes. Yeah, no prizes for guessing that this entry was going to be the one topping this list. The final year or so of Cody's AEW run will always be a talking point. Boo started to rain down on him during a 2021 feud with Malachi Black, and fans even tossed his weight belt back towards the ring on the Thanksgiving Eve edition of Dynamite. Things were not going well on the babyface front.
Well
Rumors
met.
were spinning in Rhodes' head backstage too. Since claimed that Dan Lambert handing him the old WWF title, a belt his father had held unofficially in the 70s, reignited his lust for WWE.
Well, what do we have here? Caught in the act and no gold to pay your fine. I'm confiscating your...
TNT title ladder match.
Then pay This is hard. Where you fall down and bleed to death.
Post-defeat. Cody's eyes darted around the place, but they'd soon be firmly focused on WrestleMania 38.
One thing that 2022, every single WCW player is dead. Now this is because the company is no longer around. Especially with these 10 people, at these 10 precise moments with WCW3. And the Giants, it seemed inevitable that eventually Vince McMahon was going to go after for one. You know how he feels about Giants. He actually said to people, very well, but I get that dude is my company. I'm not going to use him like they did in WCW. I've got a much better plan. So we can get into that.
I see. Hello.
February 1999, having appearance in Valentine's Day Massacre. Have you ever watched the microphone months before this? Use the bubbles in the writing on the wall. Because for the moment, the whole coach is a different NWO. I know there's a lot of good English schools, but there can only be one giant. So later on, we're going to be...
What do you want? Goodbye.
As soon as you're done with the got bored, even tased it with a taser, and once again, just go look how white cells is.
Hey,
The worst part of all this, though, is there's just 10
You fall down and bleed to death. Am I supposed to be impressed?
That's not all. Not all those who struggle with WCW, mostly down is long documented.
It is such a shame that you not forget when he arrived in Naples in 1996. He quite literally changed the game. Well, he's looking around going, well, why the hell? I think he's trying to make it equal to 2000. Just a little bit sad. He is excellent skills. He gives him a power bomb to win. And what he does, quite on the second best recipe, he counts the 1, 2, 3. Well, she does that. And Scott Wolfie goes back to the second room. Little do we know, never going to see the world champion the best of him here. The girl I into it, he's illustrated double up. Because never see one of those who's got to be the forget about all the big stuff. Those times he was Great EDP. Greedy in March 2001 was WCW's last ever taping. They were about to be bought out by one business McMahon, but they decided to go out there. It looks like those got time of taking on EDP. Clearly someone on, so I tell you, for one thing for this, WrestleMania 13 went right after on Stone Cold Steve Austin. So why don't we just repeat that? And before you go, oh my God, that sounds absolutely terrible, incorrect, and it's quite interesting. But let's talk about the different side of a kind of on the Diamond Dallas page. You know, the red stuff coming from his head, and if they keep passing out, once you get to just look at it, you're like, wow, Dallas, what a hero he is. I don't know this. This is such an excellent match, and actually shows that maybe just maybe they were still like him, but given that a few days later he had the last ever night show, he wasn't on that show. It was down. So I suppose if anyway, maybe Kane was already negotiating with the then WWF at this stage. We know that he was going to make him jump early. Less said about that than Chris Benoit. So one of the things Chris Benoit did under WCW's employment was to win the World Heavyweight Championship. That's kind of something. But this was a Hail Mary by WCW. They needed this one. But they decided, well, if we make him the champion and give him that big gold belt, there's no way.
A rousing success, Mortal. And it appears you joined in the festivities as well. Good for you. You need to lighten up next. You'll find your equipment in that chest just there. And here's a little something for your efforts. Maybe we'll celebrate again sometime.
So now the champion is vacant. Have to have a tournament of dividends. Liverpool is so bad that it's drowning in politics. Once again, it's just another way to say WCW is 60 nothing. Given what he would go on to do, it is kind of crazy. Steve Austin had no WCW center. I get that he was Stone Cold. He was still a recognizable name. He's been in WCW for ages, and he had won some championships. For your trivia on his last match came in 1995, which was Eddie Jackson in a match that only lasted 1 minute. And there's still this rumor out there that soon after, he just walked out of WCW when they told him he was going to have to lose to the Renegade. Don't know who the Renegade was. He was WCW's version of the Ultimate Warrior, and yet it was Gerald. People have easily tried to around him. So given that they were at odds with each other, and when Eric Bischoff gave him a call to talk to him, he apparently heard off in the background going, I want to talk to that son of a bitch. Behind him. That's right, a fact that was important to him when he was really having the fact that he was hurt. So for a good old while, it was almost like to see though, and it was something to be continued. I said, it just wasn't there anymore. By Eric Bischoff, and if you off the boss, but you don't want to know all the details, maybe you can work, obviously Eric Bischoff has good shows, but the headlines are, it just all acted like children, and it sounded absolutely ridiculous. So it actually ended with an angle where WCW's billionaires are taking on the news side, and any long-term fan was able to figure out this is just a rehash of the WCW versus the NWO, and by 2000, the two had run into the ground. You can see the Bischoff had enough by this stage, and after it had come to a massive head backstage with his TV shows. You saw him on television, he was he got here for, and that was it. Look, he only ever appeared to hear other people talking about him. When the next year would roll around, if people tied to the fact that the promotion was having a terrible time and the finger of blame has been pointed at him, but never underestimate how crazy this was. He has been such an integral part. Paul Goldberg. This was just awful. A terrible decision by WCW, despite the fact that Goldberg had basically locked up the company in 1998. I mean, you can go through that 12 months and imagine the bill in as well.
all realised, oh no, that's not going to work. Yes, we tried to turn him back babyface, including in the City 2001. They teamed him up with Sergeant the West Bruce and put Goldberg.
God, there's a psychopath on the loose.
Okay, yeah, we're doing that.
Show me what you've got.
I'm warming up, you pathetic
I'm on your side. What's the matter? You getting tired?
They didn't think he was living up to his end of the deal, because of course he was going through a lot of coach stuff. I will never be able to get that. I will never be able to get my head around this. Rest that this man's heart, just let go. Like nothing as opposed to Hulk Hogan. Give it bad. Now we all remember everything that happened in the match of these 2000 Jeff down Hulk Hogan and Big Bruce had that thing that was just eventually, and it did end somehow with the hope to be the world champion and broken out of the place. What we all forget though is that we did see him one last time on the show, and it turned out it was to be the last time we ever saw him in WCW. But listen to this. He was walking backstage without the belt and his smashing damage, which is summed up WCW. They all passed around heroes, they looked at each other. They seeing something here, maybe they do vampiros and Hogan, but no, they just both walked out the frame. And Hulk Hogan never returned to WCW. They let him go, they take that heroes, they need the toilet. But no, the ball on to Hulk was the suing world champion wrestling. If you're bored today, just Google this one as well. You will feel miles more mature than everybody is on. One Chris Jericho. One of the biggest jumps during the Attitude Era from WCW to WWF, Chris Jericho in 1999, although he was in the lower of the late 90s, we got some of the big surprise, because WCW had something to Chris Jericho decided to do that. One of the official last match happened on a house show in July, his last match on Night Show, which is a feature from the team, and in between all that, WCW just rubbed their non-existent feelings and well, he's losing. We kind of feel like we should do something with him. We don't really know what to do. Yeah, I thought they put Jericho on commentary alongside Tony Schiavone as they tested running page on WCW.com. Which actually, the last time a fan saw Chris Jericho on WCW TV was when he was commentating on King versus
Practically everyone was over in the late 90s. Yeah, even this bellend is wild to look back on Raw or SmackDown tapings now and see fans going bonkers for Gangrel versus Al Snow. But it happened. Sadly, something else happened too. WWF careers had to come to an end, and many did during the old Attitude Days. None of the examples given on this list are ultra memorable high notes either. In fact, you definitely won't remember how workers like Gangrel, the Public Enemy, kissed goodbye to an era filled with excess, raunch, cash, and ass. I'm at a billboard from What Culture, and these are 10 precise moments when Attitude Era careers ended. Number 10, Gangrel. Look away now, Ashley. Concern in 1999, but he was totally de-emphasized throughout the year 2000. In fact, Old Ganger's last appearance on one of the major shows was a 90-second loss to Taz on the 7th of February episode of SmackDown. After that job, Gangrel dropped to the C-show schedule and became a jacked/metal regular. His final televised bout was a WWF European title crack versus William Regal on the 11th of November 2000. That was a wrap on the one-time Brood leader. Gangrel only wrestled one more match, a house show win over Midian, more on him later, several days later, before leaving the promotion in 2001. He's worked almost everywhere else since that near 3-year run Run as WWE's bloodbath-loving creature came to an end. He's even got his own source. Banging and banging. Number 9, Luna Vachon. Gangrel was involved in the end of Luna Vachon's run too. Together the wacky pair teamed up to take on Prince Albert, yes, a walking penis piercing, and Jacqueline on the 10th of February 2000 episode of SmackDown. The whole exercise lasted less than a minute. Luna actually scored the pin over Jackie, but then got dumped outside the ring during some post-match shenanigans, and that was that. According to Jim Ross on Grilling JR, Vachon wasn't always the easiest to deal with behind the scenes. She was struggling with a myriad of personal problems and didn't see eye to eye with some of the women in the locker room. The WWF released Luna shortly after this news tag. Vachon, who was actually married to Gangrel for a spell, blatantly was the future of women's wrestling in 2000. Things might have been different had Vinnie Mac been less, I put this, enamoured with scantily clad divas at the time. But that was the priority. Number 8, Ahmed Johnson. There was a time when Vince McMahon told guys like Bruce Pritchard and JR that he could see Ahmed Johnson as WWF champ someday. The injury-prone wrecking machine did have natural charisma by the truckload, and he was popular with the fans. It's just never going to happen. The boss had given up on Ahmed by mid-97, and things got even worse for Johnson as calendars trickled towards the new year. In February 1998, the muscle-bound pet project worked his final match at In Your House, No Way Out of Texas. His parting shot was hugging Ken Shamrock after a win over the Nation, and then performing a few dance moves for the crowd before leaving the ring. That, as it turned out, would be the last time Ahmed worked on a WWF card. Johnson left to take care of his sister, who was in poor health, and later claimed that racism behind the scenes didn't sit well with him either. Number 7, the Public Enemy. To say they weren't welcomed by the roster would be a gross understatement. Johnny Grunge and Rocco Rock were literally beaten up by the APA on Saturday Night Heat, then ignored before losing to the Hardy Boys on Z-list programming like shotgun. Their last match for the Federation was taped on the 30th of March. By the time their clash with the Hardys aired, Public Enemy were already lining up indie dates and in talks with WCW about another run there. They'd never recapture their ECW magic outside Paul Heyman's cult-like organisation. Number 6, Bob God. Right, imagine WWE scheduled an MMA-style tournament today, told the workers to fight for real, and then punished the dude who won it because he wasn't the one they thought would win. Shapement, man. That's exactly what the then WWF did with the disastrous Brawl concept in 1998. Bob Gunn hammered everyone in his path, and that wasn't supposed to happen. So after months of sitting on the sidelines twiddling his thumbs, Badass Bart was brought back as a sacrificial lamb for tough man boxer Butterbean at WrestleMania 15. He got his arse handed to him by Mr. Bean, not that one, and it was a miserable end for Gunn's once promising career. Seeing reps and officials check on Bart as he struggles to stay conscious on the biggest stages, not depressing now, especially when one knows that he was being punished for his own success. Gunn did make some cameo dates after this, and worth writing home about. Number 5, Vivian. Then again, it could be worse, at least Gunn wasn't but in effect, former devil worshipper Vivian was repackaged as an exhibitionist towards the end of his WWF career. Naked Vivian off the roster, watching backstage on monitors by invading matches in his birthday suit. And it was always going to be a short-lived thing designed to make people laugh. Vivian's last hurrah on screen came during Chris Jericho versus Kane in Armageddon 2000. The pair brawled backstage and stumbled upon Midian and Grandmaster Sexay for some reason, chatting by some vending machines. Kane bumped into Midian, then he and Jericho battered the lower corner with a few punches. The company tried to reach Midian again after this, worked a handful of dark matches under his old ex-passenger gimmick, but then got let go just a few weeks later. Number 4, Vader. Losing to Edge would not be considered a bad thing in 2022. Back in late 1998, though, yeah, staring at lights for the Canadian hopeful wasn't exactly a promising sign for Vader. He did the job for Edge on the 11th of October 1998 episode of Sunday Night Heat, and then left the promotion. Vader did make a series of one-off appearances in 2005, 2012, and 2016, but they were gimmicky cameos that were never going to lead to anything substantial. He'd been sliding down the totem pole for a solid year or so before that match with Edge. Weight gain problems had blighted Vader's reputation behind the scenes, and he'd been neutered by that 1996 feud with Shawn Michaels anyway. And WCW never came close to top billing for his final match at all. Number 3, Ken Shamrock. Wrestling magazines, newsletters, and message boards were busy with anticipation for Ken Shamrock's comeback in 2000 and in 2001. The ex-UFC fighter had returned to MMA in late 1999, but most figured he'd come crawling back to Vince for a payday or two at some stage. It didn't happen. No, Kenny Boy's final WWF match occurred on the 23rd of September 1999 episode of he lost a first blood bout to Chris Jericho on that show, then marched on to reignite his cage fighting career outside the fans' remit. Shamrock would never return to the profession for in 2002 as one of TNA's first major recruits. The last sighting WWE fans got of Ken was watching him spit up fake blood after a hockey stick beating in the hands of Jericho and Curtis Hughes. Comedy cameras cut from that into the next segment of SmackDown, and Shamrock was rarely mentioned again on TV. Number 2, X-Pac. Sean Waltman has become a darling, quite rightly, of the Nostalgia Pop crew during Hall of Fame ceremonies and Retro Raw episodes over the years. But his old X-Pac character was shelved over 20 years ago.
Please, leave me in peace. I would prefer you leave, friend. Please. They say that Kinnereth Grant... Just leave me, please.
Main event, and Waltman looked on alongside Shawn Michaels. Fans had been booing X-Pac out for at least almost 2 years by this point. Not in a good way. X-Pac leads still made that was point. WWF fans just wanted the character to go away, which is ever so slightly harsh given his skills and star power. Number 1, China. That is the face of a woman who doesn't want to work with other women. China viewed her WWF Women's title reign in 2001
Please,
to be a step down
leave me
from
in
working next
peace.
to the guys in the IC title scene. If anything, the former DX member believed she should be elevated up the card rather than scrap with Ivory and Lita for prizes management just wasn't really asked about. According to Lita, the pair did get on behind the scenes, but China's face said it all after their bout at Judgment Day. That match would wind up being the latter's last for the company. She tried to negotiate her contract for more money and then departed in November that year. This was a sorry end for someone who'd been one of the most exciting and over acts during the rise of Attitude. China was dumped in an overlooked division and then cast aside when she asked for something better.
One of the best things about the rise of AEW was the returning joy of a wrestler who was through promotion. You experienced wrestling the late 90s as WWF and WCW and you never knew who was just going to pop up on Raw and Nitro, and it was a who. Lex Luger, Bruce, Jericho, X-Pac, whereas money and new opportunities were a big reason for such moves, now learn the stories behind such things, which means I'm for what culture, hit that subscribe button for instant happiness, and for side moments, wrestlers, with the judge. Now return John Moxley. Nobody should pretend that John Moxley and Dean Ambrose wasn't used in WWE. Champion of just a member of the Shield, featured on both shows. The problem came in the fact he was misused when the decision was made to turn him heel in 2018. That train came certainly off the track. It was fine for a while as he feuded with old stables. When it was time, he was wearing gas masks, telling us he was a germaphobe, and the fans stuck. That was one of his motives for now being an asshole. Some of the things he was scripted to say were awesome, borderline embarrassing. All of it left Moxley feeling depressed, angry, and that he should probably leave the company. He got to the point where he didn't feel connected to the point of the company more, likely when he had to cut a promo while somebody jammed and he in his behind as he inoculated himself again to the audience. Compared this to what he's been doing since 2019. Yeah, I see why he needed to get out. Number 9, FTR. I mean, if we wanted to, this entry could be one sentence. WWE has never been that high on their tag team division, whereas FTR are absolutely obsessed with it. And much like Moxley, they were featured heavily. Whereas Vince McMahon has always seen his promotion as one built by signals. Anyone who duo was going to get the other end of the stick. Even though the then revival won Raw, SmackDown, and NXT Gold weren't at some abandoned quantity, it made no difference. They still went into their feud with the Usos, and the major takeaway was ass cream. As the story goes too, after yet another letdown from management about telling the tag team scene to start looking made a better pay-per-view, Cash and Dax marched backstage after a match with each brothers and said they wanted to go. WWE turned this down at the time with yet more empty promises. You know how this ends. It became clear years of not really caring about tag teams was never going to change, and as soon as they were able to leave, Number 8, Oblivon. This remains one of the best stories ever.
Cody Rhodes blows his load all into the fucking commode.
Days, mostly because his brother was gold dust, so why the hell not?
Cody Rhodes blows his load all into the work alone.
You walk in the shadow of the corruptor. What is your business? If you believe yourself worthy. Sergeant, you have...
Go then. Chris Jericho. A man we mentioned in the intro to this very video is time to go back to the 90s and World Championship Wrestling. Anybody watching Ted Turner's promotion during this period knew that Chris Jericho had what it took to smash it because he was consistently one of the most entertaining performers on the show. The problem was there was a serious glass ceiling in WCW that no one ever broke through, and as the NWO continued as the old guard stayed on top, Jericho was well aware that the position was currently in was the position he was always going to be in. That's not to say the company didn't value him as a talent, they just weren't going to. What really tipped this over the edge was Chris manufacturing his Goldberg. He would pretend to get wins over Bill by demanding matches and winning via stupid things like a counter. Goldberg had no interest in following him through, even though Jericho's plan was for him to be annihilated in the pay-per-view, and when WCW agreed with Goldberg, if the future Y2J was going to reach the apex of wrestling, he would have to leave. In 1999, it's just that. Number 6, Chris Jericho. Again, even years later, Chris Jericho still did his work. But remember that, kids, it's important. By 2017, the man was a bona fide star, smashing it within wrestling and finding success outside. He could have easily come and gone from WWE. The rest of his career had always been at a certain level. As Jericho himself told Inside the Rope, what really set him loose was what happened at WrestleMania 33. At some point in time, the plan was to crown Chris the Universal Champion by defeating 7 others at the show of shows, and there was even some chatter this would happen in the main events. While that was always likely to change, just because of the usual main madness, when the title was removed entirely, it popped up in the always pinnacle second match spot, Jericho saw the writing on the wall. Despite his CV on the with the fans, this was where WWE had pegged and always. Now what we're going to do is for him to be NXT and against the match against Kenny Omega, no one. Number 5, Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. Do you want the answer to this? Because it's simple. Money. They wanted more money, more power to it. It's just that too. WCW had designed a storyline.
Stop right there, criminal scum! Nobody breaks the law.
They needed WWF guys. This meant Eric Bischoff offered Scott Hall and Kevin Nash far more cash with fewer dates on to jump, and both have said time and time again, until they did this was business. Their contracts were also drowning in perks, most eyebrow-raising one being the Favored Nation clause, or, if anybody else was hired on more money, their pay would increase to match. According to Hall as well, he was offered the first, free, and then slowly was guaranteed figure, so that when Nash negotiated, he could get a higher rate. What finances? I'll just leave you with that and remind you in 2001. Number 4, Adam Cole in the star. He was a huge reason people wanted to watch NXT. Should have been given a shot on Raw or SmackDown.
Stop! You violated the law.
He didn't even give it a go. I don't care that he's small, as we're saying.
That's too... Okay.
If we go on reports, apparently he was offered a bumper deal to go to the main roster as his contract was coming to an end, but the ideas were nuts. The most controversial of these was that Cole would cut his hair and become league manager, and if that is true, someone may as well sign me up for a shampoo commercial, and yes, I'm bored. The point is, it doesn't make sense. There was also the issue of WWE employees not being able to branch out with the likes of Twitch, which Chugs was super into, and just look what happened when he shifted across to AEW. On day 1, he was a main event player. Number 3, Brian Anderson. A much more interesting tale because Brian Danielson didn't really feel like he could leave WWE. His own words, he loved the company, loved business as a man, and would have been very happy signing a new deal and carried on as he had been carrying on. Just something telling him that maybe, just maybe, he should branch out. He started at WrestleMania 37 when he was in the main event and felt nothing.
How are you?
Quote, at first he assumed this is how you felt before you died, which is kind of terrifying. And when he sat there at the
Greetings,
on both sides, he realized only the wrestling is the new guy chance. Well, he plans is good for the business as a whole. He can give something back. So as ever, Brian was completely selfless with this and did what he did. Probably having the run of his career right now. What a dad hero. Number 2, Mark Henry. Mark Henry had retired from in-ring competition and signed a WWE deal in 2018. His run has come to an end.
Good day.
Contributed in some sense, either as an ambassador or an agent.
Perhaps you need new armor, a weapon. I have a large selection of both.
Henry was barely being called someone who was good at
Bye.
even though he was before. Vince McMahon came thought otherwise, with a brand new company known as AEW right across the pond. Looking at all of this, however, came on for him to be absolutely savaged by Randy Orton and to look like a super.
Oblivion Lion Hells.
Like a sign on Henry's face, the redness guy is old and weak. Shockingly, Henry didn't feel like participating in such skits anymore. And yeah, I get it. This did feel really disrespectful. Number 1, quote, Luke Harper was seriously underused. WWE never seemed to understand what they had in the match. That's because he was a big dude that could fly around the ring with ease. Not his size should have been able to move the way that he did. And surprise, surprise, every time he was allowed to show this, like when he was in the Intercontinental title scene, fans went wild for the guy who was great.
What's going on with you?
Like putting this
Black
evidence
bars
time and time again,
dangerous.
man just didn't see it. Right down to saying what he really should be doing is speaking with a southern accent.
Hello, it is good to see you.
Mostly as he was from New York, you can imagine.
Only quality goods for sale here. What can I interest you in?
TV, so requested his release in 2019, and as was the way at the time, it got denied. He still turned up to WrestleMania weekend and had a great match.
Please, return soon. It's always a
Once we
pleasure
get
to see
He
you.
didn't get it. We were just stuck in Groundhog Day. It was ridiculous. Eventually, he was able to get out of his contract and he jumped to AEW and became Brody Lee. And I think the results speak for themselves.
Hi,
His role as the leader of the Dark
View
Order was
from the arcade universe.
head of the TNT Championship was utterly fantastic. We all know how horribly this ended and it'll never seem right. Let's not
Hi there.
Brody Lee was one hell of a performer.
Good day. Be seeing you.
This is a real statement I am about to make. There are plenty of fans right here, right now, who would say the ruthless aggression era was better than the attitude era. There go the comments. Really, this
What
is
can I
down
do?
to that period you grew up watching wrestling. Because 9 times out of 10,
Armor,
what
weapons,
you see
I have it all.
about
How may I help?
house with child brain. Given that a lot of
Goodbye.
programming typed in between 2002 and 2008, though, and time for what else to please hit that subscribe button.
What can I interest you in?
Ruthless aggression careers ended.
Be seeing.
Because they are indeed the same person. When you do see what old men look like compared to Fortnite, it's quite confusing, however. Because an Undertaker and American Bad actually, where they were traced and carried across, all seem to go from some sort of ancient band to a new metal. The crazy part is Fortnite only lasted
Ridiculous.
Cheap spells. Edgar's is the place to look.
Seems to be
Get to the band. In other words, what it was supposed to be. Shockingly, that failed to get over. In December 2007, he was randomly back on Extreme Championship Wrestling where he beat Jeff Lewis.
I used to.
That is. It was clear this was meant to be an attempt at something.
Can I interest you in some of my wares?
Yeah, I think we missed the boat. Wow. Before being sent down to OPW for some reason. Either. The 9 Super. Well, this one, a cool one. Mr. Barr, this is the zone on top of now, transformed into Shaniqua. She makes on this new roster.
See anything you like?
No way out pay-per-view in 2004. There she teamed with the
Only quality goods for sale here. What can I interest you in?
Kishi and Scott Tuhotti, the damn handicap match.
It's been a pleasure.
Inside of their no plans for Mars going forward. Because not only was she the one hidden here, but Big Keech took his hands and shoved it right in her face. Not a gift. Almost as soon as the show was over, her contract was terminated and we never saw her again. there was more to do here, or at least to give her another shot. I know. Great Chuck Palumbo. I think if we had just given Chuck Palumbo one gimmick and pushed him, he would have done all right. Instead, we gave him every single character under the sun, with being 1/2 billion Chuck, which has aged terribly, before just going, nah, man, he's used up like that. Saw this persona where his rise, ironically, came as he lost to Matt Hardy on the 30th of June 2008 SmackDown, worked some house matches, or he fell away entirely. It was so bizarre because Palumbo had been a main
Tidings,
citizen. In November, he was cut. I wouldn't call it a massive surprise because it was obvious he wasn't going to leave his mark in WWE. I think Chucky knew this too. He set up a bunch of business ventures outside the wrestling bubble and segued into those. 7 Lance Cable. So this is a sad story as Lance Cable passed away a couple of years after this. On the 6th of October 2008 Raw, the Cowboy found himself intertwined in a Shawn Michaels and Chris Jericho feud. Y2J had hired the big man match failed massively. Shawn just smacked
Have a
him
look
with
at my
Jericho.
wares. I'm sure there's something suitable.
This was Cade's last match, and he went out going against the guy who trained him. Like many
Thank
years,
you.
he had a
Come
couple of
again.
years
You too.
when he suffered a seizure on a flight, he was let go. One would assume this was drug-related, and that was the cause of death in 2010, but still, as a tale. The 6th, Jazz. Jazz was ahead of her time, at least from a WWE perspective. I don't know if she was in the women's division today, she would be the dominant heel champion nobody could touch. And she did get a couple of runs with the title after joining in 2001. By 2004, nothing much is happening. He left. That was probably for the best, all things considered, especially 2 years later. WWE bring her back. Especially as on the 7th of June, she was a match against Mickey James. Minutes, Jared lost. Really this promo before it started because she was released just a few months after this and down the back. I doubt Jared's ever going to become the best of all time. Seriously. 5 seconds. Remember, none of this. The tree of the sun up before the whole round. He seemed to be everything Vincent had wanted in the freshman era. Ben did everything he asked, best of his ability. Maybe he was too agreeable for good travel, and he was presented as somebody who wanted to hunt ratings. If I said that, the guy had a such fetish, and stuff got way out of control too. Snitch was proud to get to beat him. The last showing came to this ready for November 2008 Raw, where amazingly he got to the Intercontinental title contenders conference with none other than CM Punk. He said something off his head, he asked for his release. He got it, and without I was laughing at that breakthrough when Kate took and shaved his head. Once you've won the toad, or Dawn Creek. WWE did not treat Dawn Creek well at all. She was discarded during her maternity leave, was able to walk the River Lance Storm at ECW One Night Stand 2005. They had been a pairing back in the day for a date fest. And only watched on the Storm and Chris Jericho when
Fools must be separated from their illusions. I'll be here.
You have been
You have been told.
Either way, it's probably not the best idea to release them before they go away to have a baby. Number 3, Orlando Jordan.
Another mortal come to know my pity.
You may remember him from his Ring of Honor run a few years later, and he would serve as the last opponent for Jordan, who was fired 2 weeks after this. What's really crazy about it?
You will find Miller's Brazilians, a good man, an honorable man. He disguises me.
171 days.
You will let him kill you with this. The curse of face. As you are doing this for me, I'll save your miserable life. Probably. Get out of my sight.
Number 2, Heidenreich. Just one of the weirdest wrestlers ever is Heidenreich. It's hard to find one person who is support man. Even if you were, so odd that quickly changed. Remember when he insisted he wanted to do bad things to Michael Cole? Oh, no. It didn't stop the powers that be deciding each department would each review alongside Animal. That didn't work at all. Heidenreich wasn't forced, but Heidenreich it's even more painful because Walker actually passed away in 2003. That was the right time. He appeared on with Animal on 31st of December 2005. Terry's yet another hard match to find, but it's not the network. The pair did defeat them, Yo and Vito. Like a documentary about this guy. Don't get it. One, marvelous. Who else, right? Even if you bring in other eras, you wrestlers on an exit like this, the whole thing was a mess. It is mad that WWE broadcasting songs of post 9/11 terrorists was a good idea, especially if it didn't start that way. There was no nuance to begin with, and Muhammad was claimed as being wrongfully subject. And then in July 2005, SmackDown, quite literally acted like he was a terrorist. It was appalling. It also coincided with a very real London bombing, which made it even more distasteful. Unsurprisingly, those above WWE said this was so that had to be written off TV ASAP. It made a lot of the great American classic when the Jet Man took Hassan and powerbombed the people's stage to the floor, but played up like dead.
I would ask that you not bother me. Just listen. I would ask that you not bother me, especially in this place.
If you were to listen to a myriad of expose podcasts, interviews,
I am relatively serious.
which focus on the highs and crushing lows of the wrestling industry.
She was my wife. And just listen, please.
That is, the wrestlers are often targeted with a tongue of very silly bollocks. Be it terrible gimmick changes, bizarre looking or just some asinine requests by the hierarchy to go against everything that made them stars in the first place. It seems that we need the patience of a saint to get anywhere these days. Although everyone has their limits, everyone has their breaking point. Sometimes the most fascinating moments of caught on camera just witnessed by this. Let's take a look at this gallery of tape today. As I'm Jules, this is rockculture.com, and these are the 10 exact moments.
I have sworn not to raise a weapon in anger, but you have offended my honor in this most holy place. Prepare to die, devil!
Been terrible for years, decades even, and yet somehow people still way more than they create anything of worth. Hence why Man Rose's hair got more main roster screen time from the Snapchat.
You elves are all the same. All flesh and no fury.
His debut segment actually marked the moment somebody died inside. Knock knock, who's there? Braden Walker, I'm gonna knock your brains out. That exchange was so fun.
That's the best you can do!
The WWE system is a way of
That's the best you can do! This is it! Am I supposed to be impressed? Am I supposed to be impressed? This is the part where you fall down and bleed to death! You're pathetic! Get down! This ends here! Yeah! You'll never take me down! Die!
Steve Austin picked up the he was introduced by together, who's there to conduct his good friend Gene Oakland. They erupted in chants of Austin and Hogan in an apparent attempt to will a dream match into existence. And Austin, playing along, said, "It's funny, I was going through my bag in the back and I found a can of whoop-ass and it had Hulk Hogan's name on it." The crowd popped laughing. Austin was the babyface in between the task set out for you. Well done. Another face like a slap after, which normally he might have enjoyed were it not still getting your prize, but it's actually his own. I think it was worth it. Don't do anybody else keep up good work, little thought. Bret Hart. At Survivor Series 1997, Bret Hart screwed out of the WWF title on his way out of the company, broke the letters WCW in the air. Meant as a defiant gesture, he looked absolutely defeated. There was no real conviction from his body language. He visibly did not want to go, and the reason why immediately revealed itself. He debuted at Starrcade 97 as a special guest referee. He had questioned whether WCW would know how to book a wrestler of his standing, and LOL WCW being LOL WCW answered that question literally. Contractually, he wasn't able to immediately wrestle for WCW, but there were a million different means of introducing him to the company. Precisely 1 million of those reasons benefited from the anticipation.
Yes.
It's not as if, as shown through Sting's here, they should have noticed.
Have you ever met anyone who got rich betting on the arena? Good day.
What do you want? Good day.
Just way cooler, bro. A multi-various regulation before he was even promoted. Most WCW members do fail. And as Eric Bischoff pointed out much later, he definitely lost his style. At the finish of December to Dismember's Extreme Elimination Chamber match, Paul Heyman's man didn't win. WWE developmental prospect Bobby Lashley last defeated WCW and WWE stalwart The Big Show for the ECW Heavyweight Championship. To sell this, Heyman stood ringside covering his face with his
Leave
hand
me in
and
peace.
gestured. He was
No.
method man.
You're dead. I killed you myself. What manner of creature are you? Will I be tormented with your image forever?
While it was insane to expect something resembling the old days as fans really wanted,
You treacherous little filch. What's going on?
stamped out by Vince trying to put over his own stars on the brand that wasn't actually intended for them. Heyman therefore had to watch his dream die twice over thanks to McMahon, and after a legendary blow-up with Vince, Heyman didn't even make it to the Number 4, Gail Kim. Gail Kim was a tremendously accomplished talent years ahead of the North American in-ring standard. This could be seen in a video of her early training days. You could even call her a prodigy. Speed. She was young.
No.
There was this snap.
You're dead. I killed you myself. What manner of creature? No.
Made sure that any chance that she had of breaking out of the Divas market she made was snuffed out instantly. After months and months, who finally took matters into her own hands, actively refusing to be part of the shield that ground her and other women down by eliminating herself immediately on a Battle Royale in 2011, or shortly quitting. It was effectively a giant middle finger on camera. Number 3, Dean Ambrose. The Dean Ambrose Chronicles is a fascinating watch, a brilliant blend of the work and the shoot that created a complex and fascinating man that stood in astonishing contrast to the cartoon that he played on television. Watching it now, it's even more fascinating. With a documentary that sought to capture Dean Ambrose's return